I have no problem working on a 73 Bronco. To work on a brand new Bronco, I need all sorts of specialty tools. That's something that, we would put people's lives at risk.
Who do you think is responsible for the fact that the new Bronco needs all of these specialty tools? Cars keep going in this direction, and you have CEOs, you have leadership, and I'm assuming the leadership is like Farley, in that they are not pro right to repair. Being able to repair your own car and have a product which is repairable is something that is ingrained into American society. As long as we have been driving cars, we have been wrenching on them in our driveways. It encourages competition. It helps bring prices down when you have choice of repair. You have choice of mechanics you can go to. You have choice of parts you can buy. This is what is integral to a healthy capitalist system. You have to have the choice to choose, and right to repair is that choice.
From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
Got a lot to get to today on the program. Thanks for joining me here on the show. I want to talk about how Jeeps are catching fire again. Yes, again, they are catching fire. It seems like all the time there's yet another recall for these things. It was like last year, was it late last year? It was like one recall after another. And at this point, if you own a Jeep, man, I don't know what to tell you. We're going to get to that. Toyota has unveiled a new GR product. Yes, is it the Celica? Is it the new MR2? Is it a sixth generation Supra? We'll get to that. And Ford CEO Jim Farley. I thought I liked this guy, but he has come out with a rather anti-right to repair stance that I don't like. So we're going to get to my thoughts on that and more. It's the Automotive ADHD Show. And by the way, if you're catching this show on the radio, several great radio stations to catch it on all across Southern Colorado, but you can also see the show on video. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, and more. You got to check it out there, especially the YouTube channel. We are working on growing that YouTube channel every single day, getting mighty close to 10,000 subscribers. You can get us across the finish line, and that is a fantastic way to support the program, and it doesn't cost you anything. It is a great way for you to show support to the show. Yes, you can patronize some of the show's sponsors, but you can subscribe on YouTube as well. Look up Automotive ADHD Show on YouTube, and you will find it there. Now, before we get to any of this here on the program, I got to talk about some stuff going on right here in the Pikes Peak region, because it is hill climb season. Hill climb season is upon us, and this week coming up, this upcoming week, is going to be an action-packed week of all of the regular hill climb stuff that we are so used to now in the Pikes Peak region. We've got the Hill Climb Fan Fest going on in downtown Colorado Springs. That's going to be on Friday. Now, I've had several people message the show asking if I'm going to have a booth there. I'm going to be at the event, but I'm going to be on foot traversing the event, getting as many interviews with different Pikes Peak hill climb drivers as I can. So I'm not going to be tied down to a single booth this year. But if you are attending the event, well, you can spot me in the crowd. I'll be hanging out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Look for the guy wearing the More Cars Than Friends shirt, and you will probably spot me there. And there's going to be a lot of great folks there as well. Now, the hill climb, that's coming up. Basically, if you're listening to this on the radio right now, that's coming up a week from Sunday. And now the racers have been up on the mountain already doing a bunch of tuning, doing a bunch of testing. Coming up this week, they're going to have qualifying on the mountain. And once they do that, I'm going to be reaching out to some drivers, some voices that you may find familiar, and we're going to get them on the show. So this is going to be not this weekend, but next weekend's going to be a very hill climb packed show, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, come on, the open of this show says from Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak. I can't leave you hanging without some Pikes Peak hill climb coverage, and it's going to be hopefully it's going to be a good year. Hopefully it's going to be a good year. Last year, I was attending the event as media, and all throughout the week leading up to the race, a bunch of the practice sessions, a bunch of the qualifying sessions, all of that went really good. But if you were there last year, you know that it was windy. It was seriously windy. Windy enough, in fact, they were getting 75 plus mile an hour gusts up near the peak. And they decided, and probably rightfully so, they said, look, we can't race in this. The event organizers had to pull the plug on at least the top section of the race. They ended up finishing the race. They moved the finish line down to Glen Cove, and that was, I mean, barely. I mean, you're really not even up at tree line at that point. You're still in the trees. You're nearly to tree line, but you're not there yet. And that means that race got cut short significantly. And I can tell you, being there, even at Glen Cove, the wind was insane. It was monumental. In fact, I had the really, really wise idea to try and, camp out there. Now, what I do is I like to get in and camp the night before for hill climb season. Now, the reason I do that is because if you load in as a spectator, you will inevitably get loaded in around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when they let all the cars up. That's when everyone gets situated. Then the racing starts basically at the crack of dawn. And you don't get any sleep. No one has slept at all during the hill climb season. It just doesn't happen, especially the day of the hill climb. No one sleeps. And I figured, well, I would get a camping pass. They have a limited number of these every year. So I got one way back in December of the prior year and said, I'm going to do the smart thing. I'm going to camp. I am therefore going to get a full night's rest on the mountain, which, again, pretty much never happens. Well, I thought I was going to get a full night's rest. It never happened that way because it was so stinking windy. And I had the bright idea, I really, truly think I'm a genius for this, in fact, of saying, you know what, when I go camping, I like to pack light. I got a backpack, and I got a hammock in that backpack, and I got a poncho. If it starts raining, I'll wrap that thing up in the poncho, and I'll be A-okay. I've camped like that before. It's a real bare bones way of camping. I'm not the kind of guy who wants to bring out an entire RV, or if you're going camping, you get like the giant, 20-foot wide tent. No, that's not me. I just do a backpack and a hammock, and I'm happy. Well, the thing is, if you're in a hammock, and imagine the winds are gusting at 75 miles per hour, you're getting swung around pretty dramatically in that hammock. In fact, I gave myself motion sickness in the hammock trying to lay there. I was just getting flopped all over the place, and then I'm getting up at night trying to tighten up the hammock so it's flopping around less, and it really ended up not working well. It ended up not working well at all. And then there were some other casualties to that. Even up at Glen Cove, people who had brought pop-up tents, who had awnings on their RVs. There were some RV spots. So some people who at least were RV camping might have gotten a little bit of sleep. They were at least smarter than me in the fact that they weren't tied up in a hammock between some trees with 75 mile an hour gusts. The hammock or the awnings were blowing away. The pop-up tents were blowing away. There was a lot of battle damage, you could say, because of stuff blowing away. And in fact, my truck was a bit of a casualty that last year because a big old section of tent blew into the back window of my truck and just completely obliterated the back window of my truck. So I found myself right after the race trying to find a glass guy that week who could put a new window in my truck. So needless to say, last year was hectic, and it was frustrating for the racers as well because, well, they didn't get a full race in. They basically stopped at Glen Cove. That means all of the times from last year, if you were trying to set a record, were basically invalid. None of the times counted for anything at that point. I mean, these guys had been practicing for weeks and weeks on end. They had been getting tons of sleepless nights, trying to get their cars working, trying to make everything work, just for race day to come along and for them to get cut short and have their times mean nothing effectively, right? So, I mean, that's a big disappointment if you're one of the racers there. Now, that is also something that does come with the territory. I mean, the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb is the kind of event that you cannot predict what is going to happen. And in fact, I've done the hill climb now for, I think I did the past 4 years of hill climb season, and I covered it each year on the show here. And the fact is, out of those 4 years, well, like there was barely any time where there was actually good weather. In fact, most of the times I was on the mountain, something crazy weather-wise happened. I remember one year a couple years ago where practice was fine. The practice season was the practice week was great. Nothing happened. It was perfect weather. Race day comes along, freezing rain and fog. There was ice on top of the mountain, snow and ice, and it was slick. It was really, really slick. And that happened. And a lot of cars went off. Now, the event organizers, they're in a tough spot because they've got all these sponsors tied into this. They've got all of the racers tied into it. They've been preparing themselves for the race for months and months. I mean, the Hill Climb Association, I mean, this is all they do. And it's tough when you're in that position to call it and say, hey, we got to cancel the event. So this kind of stuff happens all the time with hill climb season. So fingers crossed this year is a good one. Hey, we're going to keep this discussion going and talk about why Jeeps are catching fire and why Ford CEO Jim Farley just fell off my list of good CEOs. You're listening to the Automotive ADHD show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break. Hey, Matt West here for SpyTech GPS. We are big advocates on this program for preventing auto theft. And there's a lot of things that have to go into preventing auto theft, everything from the legislative level to the law enforcement level to you, the car owner. Now, what happens when all of that fails and your car does get stolen? Well, you need a way to track the car that isn't just an Apple AirTag. Apple AirTags, yeah, they're great for, tracking your bags maybe at an airport. They're great for, sticking on your wallet and making sure you don't lose that. But they're not great for tracking an entire car. And the reason being is because they alert thieves that the thieves are being followed by an AirTag. That's the last thing you want. You don't want those thieves looking for the AirTag. You need a dedicated GPS tracker, and you can save 15% off one at spytech.com, SPYTEC.com. Code AutoADHD15. That promo code again, AutoADHD15.
No left lane hogs here. Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
So before the break, we were talking about the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb and how exciting of an event it is. I mean, it's a big event here in Colorado Springs every single year. This is going to be the 104th running of the race. And I was talking about in the last segment how I'm hoping the weather holds out, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen at the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And that's one of the challenging things. It's not like a race where, you can predict it. It's not even like the road conditions are predictable every single year because the tarmac actually changes the course of it doesn't, but the undulations in the tarmac change every year because of the really aggressive freeze and thaw cycles that happen up there on the mountain. I mean, there's no other motorsports event that happens at 14,000 feet above sea level. Now, we're going to get some thoughts from some hill climb drivers out at the Fan Fest a little bit later this week. If you want to stay in touch with that, we're going to run those interviews. We're going to get them at Fan Fest. I'm going to be there on foot. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be downtown Colorado Springs, Friday, June 19th. And we're going to get some thoughts from those drivers about how the race has been looking so far, how the practice sessions have been looking. So you're going to want to stay tuned to get some of that. And if you want to get that before anyone else, especially on the radio, you got to follow the show on social media. We're growing that social media presence every single day, for better or for worse. I mean, do you really want a guy like this coming across your social media feed? Do you really? Well, if you do, you can follow the show And we're on Instagram. Look up Automotive ADHD Show there. We're on Facebook. Of course, you can follow the show on YouTube and check out the podcast. If you miss any minute of the show, check out the podcast on Spotify as well. Now, looking at the hill climb season, I think this is going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of events surrounding that. And of course, in the local area, we're getting primed and ready for event season. In fact, it's already underway. I do want to thank Taven from Primal Garage for inviting me out to his event that he did. I took the S2000 out there last weekend, and it was a blast. A good, old-fashioned, local, wholesome car show. And, you know, I've talked about how the car scene has been drifting away from that in many ways on this program for a long time. And it was a return to roots. It was a return to basics, and I really enjoyed it. So I would encourage you, if you've got a cool car, to get out there and enjoy the car show season. And even if you don't, hop out to the nearest car show, patronize some of the sponsors there, hit up the food trucks there. It's always worth it. It's a great way to spend the afternoon and support the local car scene in your community. So thanks again for Taven at Primal Garage for inviting me out to that. It was a lot of fun, and it gave me a good excuse to get the S2000 out and get some miles on it, which was fun. Now, I got to talk a little bit about, let's see, what do we want to get hit on here? Ford? I think Ford. I need to bash on Ford CEO Jim Farley just a little bit, you see, because Jim Farley, I have given him praise in the past for being one of the only automotive industry CEOs who supports the car enthusiast. Now, I might have to retract some of that a little bit. Now, Jim Farley, to give you context, he in the past has said that Ford is going to stay committed to the V8 rear-wheel drive platform of the Mustang. He said the Mustang isn't going to go anywhere, even if they, as Ford, end up being the only kid on the block who actually has a V8 rear-wheel drive muscle car on the show. And if you recall, in years prior on this program, we have set in stone what a muscle car is. And just in case I need to remind you on that, a muscle car must be rear-wheel drive, must have a V8, and it must be American. Gets bonus points for having a manual transmission, but that's not a necessity. It's got to do those three things. And yeah, someone comes in the comments on YouTube all the time and points out, well, yeah, but the Mercedes XYZ, whatever, AMG is more of a muscle car than any American car will be. I'm sure it's fast, it's fun, it's rear-wheel drive, it's V8. Ain't American, though. It's got to be American. We defined in the United States, we were the creators of the muscle car for all intents and purposes. We were. I mean, you had the enthusiasts who were modifying cars in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the bootleggers at one point who ultimately led to NASCAR. And then in the 1960s, you had OEM saying, hey, this idea of putting a big engine in a little car, that could work pretty good. So they got on that and started making production muscle cars. You could argue that really started with the Pontiac GTO as the first true American muscle car, which was also led up by John DeLorean, as in, that John DeLorean who made stainless steel time machines to go do coke in and stuff. That John DeLorean. He actually, before doing time machines and peddling drugs, he did make the muscle car. So we do have to give him credit for doing that, obviously. So anyway, not to get off track here, but Farley, I've supported his notion of being the only company doing a true American muscle car, as GM gets rid of their muscle cars, as Ram gets rid of their muscle cars. And, he has been steadfast in his commitment to continue the lineage of the muscle car, even if the Mustang is the only true muscle car on the market. Now, somebody did remind me in the comments section on my YouTube when I talked about this last, that the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing, make sure I get all of that right, does exist. That does exist. That is still on the market. And to Chevrolet's credit, or General Motors, I should say, the CT5V Blackwing is V8, rear-wheel drive, and American, and can be had with a 6-speed manual transmission, also a supercharger with that, I think that definitely counts as a muscle car. But we're also talking about premium Cadillac money for that versus pony car money, which you can get obviously in the Mustang, for example. Prior to Chevrolet canning the Camaro, you could also get a reasonably priced Camaro for the money. Obviously, you can trim out that Camaro and get it way up into the dollar figures there. You can get those dollar figures really high with it. But the notion being that somewhere in the lineup, there is a V8 rear-wheel drive, maybe manual transmission pony car for an affordable price, right? So Farley has had my support on that. But he is trying my patience here, because here's the thing. While I also support pony cars, I support muscle cars. I guess you could argue the muscle car and the pony car are two different categories here. But in the modern world, we really have blended those definitions, a pony car versus a muscle car. Some people would argue that a muscle car is a big body car now, think of the old Mopars and stuff, and a pony car is smaller like the Mustang and the Camaro. Let's not blur the definition too much, because we don't have much to play with now when it comes to V8 rear-wheel drive American cars. We really don't. The options are limited. Those lines have been blurred for a while. So Farley, though, has attacked Right to Repair, and I've got a sound clip that I would like you to hear, to check out. And this comes by way of the Detroit Free Press, who stopped Farley for a quick impromptu interview after he had just had a meeting with the Trump administration to discuss Right to Repair. Now, I appreciate that the Trump administration has an open dialogue going on with manufacturers about Right to Repair. Will this pan out to being something important, and will it pan out to something tangible? I don't know. We'll get into that. But I want you to take a listen here to what Farley has to say about Right to Repair, because I find it, I do find it somewhat troublesome, and I do find it somewhat problematic here. And so let's go ahead and see. Let's pull up this clip. Here it is. Here is Ford CEO Jim Farley.
I think Ford's position is very reasonable. We're really a big advocate for the ability to repair a vehicle, but it has to be done at a reasonable cost. But
you don't want people repairing their own vehicles.
No, that's fine. Not for warranty work, though. These are very complicated cars, and we don't think that's safe for many of the repairs on our vehicles. Someone at home like myself could never do it. I mean, I have no problem working on a 73 Bronco. To work on a brand new Bronco, I need all sorts of specialty tools. That's something that, we would put people's lives at risk.
Who do you think is responsible for the fact that the new Bronco needs all of these specialty tools? Who do you think is responsible for that? Tell me. I mean, it's one of these things that, Ford CEO Jim Farley in one phrase there says, yes, I'm supporting Right to Repair. In one notion, he does say that. But in another notion, he goes, well, not really. I mean, yeah, okay, you can, change your tires, change your oil, you can do that type of stuff. But no, anything more, that's not acceptable. We can't have anything more than that. And, some people might say I'm being a little too harsh on him here, but it really goes to show what a CEO like him defines as repair. Now, to play devil's advocate, he is correct that modern cars require all sorts of specialty tools and stuff. He is correct that is the case. You need special scan tools to check on different modules, to program modules. You need special scan tools that, bear in mind, also require you to have subscriptions to them. In fact, I was hanging out at a friend of the show, Brian, OBD1 Kenobi. I was hanging out at his shop actually just a little bit ago, and he was working on a customer's Dodge Charger Hellcat. I think it was like a 2022 Hellcat. And he was working on a customer's car, and he had to scan some modules on it. He was trying to troubleshoot a check engine light, and he got his scan tool out. And bear in mind, he's got this really nice, fancy, high-end scan tool. It cost him over $1,000. I can't remember which model it is offhand here, but it's a very expensive scan tool that he also has to pay a subscription for. Well, he goes to plug it into the car, and it tells him, oh, yeah, you can't read any of these modules and any of these codes right now because you need a subscription. And he goes, well, what the heck? I do have a subscription. And there was an issue with the scan tool authenticating his subscription through the network, and it just wasn't working for him right then and there. So then he has to take his mind off of troubleshooting the car to then troubleshooting his scan tool and figuring out why it doesn't see the subscription that he paid for. And he wasn't able to get it working right away. And actually wasn't able to get it working at all. He had to go to some other methods to scan it. Now, some people have argued, well, yeah, you could see basic OBD codes without a subscription. Well, the troubleshooting was a little more involved in this, and that's just one example. I get it. That's one sort of anecdotal example. It's like one guy. But that stuff happens all the time with cars, and it makes repairing them more frustrating. It makes repairing them challenging. We're going to continue this after the news break. It's Automotive ADHD. Don't go anywhere.
He's the nut behind the wheel and behind the mic. This is Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
Little after the bottom of the hour, if you're catching the show on the radio. Several great radio stations to catch this show on all across Southern Colorado. Before the break, I was talking about CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, and why I feel a little betrayed by him with his stance on right to repair. And it goes well beyond what I was talking about in the last segment. And we will get to that here, but I do want to take a second to tell you, hold on, about one of the show's sponsors, Chemical Guys. I am a fan of Chemical Guys products, and I have right here in the studio the bucket. I think the bucket is a great, absolutely fantastic a way to get started, even if you already have some car detailing supplies. This includes some stuff you probably, well, either don't have or at some point here now you probably got to replace it. This gives you a microfiber wash mitt, gives you microfiber towels. You can see I added some of my own microfibers as well to the bucket. Gives you great cleaning supplies, and these here, you've got the wash and wax. I like that quite a bit, in fact. You've got tire shine, wheel detailer, and then you've got interior detailer, which I don't have in the bag right there. But also, importantly, if you've ever done any automotive detailing and you haven't had one of these, this is a grit dirt catcher that you put in the bottom of the bucket. This is actually a really important part of detailing your car, because if you just keep putting the microfiber, the wash rag, the mitt, you just keep putting that into the bucket, well, what happens is the dirt that you're getting off of your car comes off of the wash mitt, goes down into the bottom of the bucket, and you're swirling all that dirt around, and it's getting picked up again by the microfiber. And what happens then is it gets embedded into the microfibers, and then what you end up doing is you end up just rubbing the dirt back into your paint. You ever wash your car and step back and go, oh, where'd all these swirl marks come from? It's because you weren't using a dirt guard in the bottom of your bucket. And we don't want swirl marks on paint. Swirl marks on paint is the type of stuff that usually gets left over when, the car dealership sends the lot tech who's been there for 3 hours to go wash your car. We don't like that either, but you want to prevent that at home when you are washing your car. So you can get yourself the bucket here. These are great products. I use them personally every single day. Well, do I wash my car every day? I'll be honest. No, I use it maybe once a week though. Once a week, I'm usually washing one of my cars, usually whichever one I'm driving the most that week. Oftentimes the Subaru. I tend to daily the Subaru. I sort of commute in that. So, and I like to keep it nice and clean. So I keep this in the trunk of the car. Oh, I forgot this here. And if you want to get your very own bucket, you can do that. Patronize Chemical Guys. And if you check out the link on the podcast of this show, if you're listening on the radio, jump over to Facebook, Instagram, the podcast, follow the link there for Chemical Guys. And that is an affiliate link. So whenever you use that, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but it kicks a little bit back my way and helps support the show. So check out Chemical Guys, support the show, and keep your car clean. At least try to. It can be hard in Colorado. It can be hard to keep your car clean, but it's worth giving it a shot. Now, before the break, Jim Farley. Jim Farley he's got me conflicted because, look, I love his stance on muscle cars. I'm a fan of his stance on muscle cars, but this right to repair stance is problematic. He says, well, I can work on my 73 Bronco, but I can't work on one of these new Broncos at home. And it's not just, right to repair isn't just about you as the DIYer being able to repair your car. It's not just about that. Yeah, that's part of it. That is absolutely part of it. That's the part I like, right? Because I'm a guy who wrenches on his cars. I like doing that. It's a nice way to, it's a hobby for one, but for two, it's a nice way to save some serious money. I mean, I don't make enough money to support an entire fleet of cars if I'm paying somebody else to work on it. I make enough money to have like one car maybe, and maybe take it to the dealership sometimes to get it worked on. But that's not how I want to live personally, and I want the freedom to work on my own cars, and it affords me the ability to have cool, interesting cars that I'm not going to pay someone $200 an hour to work on it, but I can work on it myself on the weekends and make something nice, right? I'm the DIYer in this case, and maybe you are as well, but right to repair also involves if that is not you, if you don't work on your own cars, if you don't want to, if you don't have time, if you don't know how, that's all fine. Right to repair empowers you to select where you would like the car repaired. Would you like to take it somewhere other than the dealer who's charging $250, $300 an hour? Would you like to take it to your local mechanic shop, your mom and pop mechanic shop? Maybe you've got a mechanic, a family mechanic. You really trust that guy. He's proven his integrity to you as a mechanic. If you've got a mechanic like that, you need to hang on to that guy. You need to keep giving him business, because mechanics like that are constantly being driven out of business by insane repair policies. And, that's why right to repair here isn't just because of it doesn't just affect the DIYer, right? That's always my perspective. I get that. That's sort of a bias I have. My default perspective is, this goes against the DIYer. And that's that was kind of Farley's, cheap shot at DIYers. Well, I wouldn't expect someone to be able to repair this in their garage. Okay. All right, fine. You need a special scan tool. You need special equipment. You need special software subscriptions. You shouldn't need any of that. But we live in a world where you do, right? So what happens then to the independent mechanic who has that stuff, who goes out of his way to buy those expensive and more increasingly more expensive scan tools, to pay for the stupid software subscription to go with them? By the way, if you have a tool, it should be a scan tool like that should be like a wrench in your toolbox. When was the last time the wrench in your toolbox said, your software subscription's up and we need an automatic payment from you. Oh, your card declined. I guess you can't turn this 10 millimeter bolt today. Sorry. That's not how that works. Scan tools should be the same thing. Now you could say, yeah, but they always have to give you updates, and it costs money to make software updates for the scan tools to support newer products. Okay, fine. Then maybe, all right, let's meet in the middle. You buy the scan tool, you can use it, but hey, this new fleet of cars came out that uses a new type of interface protocol for some module, and we as the scan tool company, we built an extension that supports that. Okay, fine. One-time payment. I'll pay for the update that supports the new stuff. But the reoccurring payment stuff, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. But with Farley here, I'm getting off track, but with Farley here, he is completely leaving out the independent mechanic when it comes to the right to repair argument. He is. And again, I would argue that, okay, fine, you don't expect the DIYer to be able to, do all these complex procedures on cars, in the garage. Like he said, well, I'll work on a 73 Bronco, but not one of these new ones. I mean, let's be honest. Jim Farley's not working on if he has a 73 Bronco, he's not working on it himself. But I don't know when the last time that dude lifted a wrench is. I don't know. I have no idea. But the fact is, these new cars shouldn't even need that. Why do we live in a world where new cars need all of this complicated stuff? We shouldn't live in that world. New cars don't need all of the complicated modules and systems and networks and all of this stuff to be a car. We need to get back to what cars should be, which, by the way, is not, computers on wheels, right? That's like one of the biggest gripes I have with EVs, for example. It's not even the fact that it's an electric drivetrain that I have a problem with. I have a problem with all of the software integrated stuff and the fact that it's an iPad on wheels and it's full of touchscreens that break. It's full of systems that fail when there's software updates. And people like to argue, well, yeah, Matt, those are fringe cases, though. The majority of them work fine. I don't care because out of warranty, I have cars and I break them all the time. I am going to be the fringe case out of warranty, and I don't want that as a consumer. I don't want that one bit. My Subaru WRX, it's a 24. It's the newest car that I want to own. And even then, I don't like the touchscreen in it. I don't like being spammed with, hey, here's a reminder for your local Subaru dealer wants to send you a message, and it's a reminder to buy some stupid product that they have or a aftermarket thing. I don't like getting advertised to, this has happened to me, in my center console. I don't want that. And if anything, I'm looking at aftermarket ways to disable a lot of that stuff because it's starting to get on my nerves. But the thing is that cars keep going in this direction, and you have CEOs, you have leadership, and I'm assuming the leadership is like Farley in that they are not pro right to repair. And why? In all fairness, devil's advocate again, why would they be? The CEO of Ford doesn't make any money by allowing you to repair the car yourself, right? I get that. He makes no money by allowing you right to repair. His company makes no money. In fact, they make significant money from after-sale service deals and contracts and all of that stuff. They do. But the fact is that being able to repair your own car and have a product which is repairable is something that is ingrained into American society. As long as we have been driving cars, we have been wrenching on them in our driveways. We've been wrenching on them long before we had driveways. We're wrenching on them in dirt ditches and things like that, keeping these cars on the road. And you can argue from a societal perspective that having right to repair is better for everybody because it means, A, more freedom of choice. It enables a truly capitalistic market rather than an outright monopoly, for example. It encourages competition. It helps bring prices down when you have choice of repair. You have choice of mechanics you can go to. You have choice of parts you can buy. You can buy used. You can buy aftermarket. You can buy new OEM. You can do all of those things. This is what is integral to a healthy capitalist system. You have to have the choice to choose, and right to repair is that choice, whether you're the DIYer like me, whether you just need the car worked on at your local independent service center, or you've got a family shade tree mechanic who you think does a great job and you'd like to support them instead. That is your decision to make, regardless of the fact that CEOs like Farley don't have anything to benefit from it, right? If anything, they should be trying to make cars that are, if they say, we're not making enough money because all of these people are having to repair their cars and all this stuff, and we don't want aftermarket service on cars. All right, we'll make the cars more reliable then. Sell them for more, but make them more reliable so I don't have to go to the mechanic. Actually build a decent product again. I know none of this is going to happen. It's just wishful thinking at this point. But I think if you're someone in the market for a car, we should be shopping around for cars. What I need to do something like this, is build a list of the most repairable cars and publish that list. You know how like J.D. Power, best cars of the year? We should have like most repairable cars of the year and actually make that a decision when you're buying a car. And that'll actually eventually help these manufacturers to realize what the consumers need. So, hey, we'll be back. It's Automotive ADHD. Don't go anywhere.
He brushes his teeth with 5W30. Matt West is on Automotive ADHD.
Oh, we are wrapping up the show. Fourth half of the show. Last but not least, I got to get to some stuff with Jeep. Jeep has been having a hard time lately. They absolutely have. Before we talk about why, if you've got a Jeep Wrangler or any really Jeep product, you probably shouldn't park it indoors. I know. I'm calling out our chief engineer at the radio station. He has a Wrangler Rubicon. Anyway, he's got the 4xe hybrid version of the Wrangler Rubicon, which I do like the 4xe. I rented one a while back and drove it cross country. I drove it from Washington, D.C. to Colorado after a flight got canceled. That was a fun adventure. And I actually liked it quite a bit. It was really nice. Anyway, but I do want to share a quick story. I got an email from a longtime listener of the program, Pamela. Pamela sent a lovely email about one of her stories at the Pikes Peak International Raceway. And a couple weeks ago, I talked about how the Pikes Peak International Raceway is closing its doors after the 2026 season. And I asked anybody to share stories that they had of the track, the most memorable moments they had. Now, her memorable moment here involves a little bit of hail, unfortunately, but it all ended up working out. And in the end, she's got a 2011 Dodge Charger, 5.7 liter Hemi. She sent some pictures of it in email, by the way. It is a great car, and she has the all-wheel drive package with the car. So she's got the 5.7 liter Hemi and all-wheel drive. Now, she asked, does it count as a muscle car? Because my definition, which we also just talked about earlier on the show, is that it has to be rear-wheel drive. And I think we can make an exception, one exception, for Pamela's all-wheel drive Charger, because it's got everything else going for it. And the all-wheel drive Charger, by the way, a lot of the police car spec Chargers are the V8s with the all-wheel drive, and it's a really cool way to get that car. I think that's really fun, and it's exciting, especially with the police ones. The police ones, which now have a bajillion miles on them after, 10 years, are coming up at police auctions. And they are incredible deals, mind-blowing deals for V8 all-wheel drive, big body sedan. Those are going to be really cool. Those are going to be really cool project cars. But Pamela, she says she's had hers for a while, and she was at the Pikes Peak International Raceway. She got an invitation to a high-performance Porsche driving event. So she went out there to go show the Porsche guys how it's done in a Charger, by the way. So good on her for doing that. But one of the things that happens at PPIR, she said this was back in 2018, PPIR gets hail. It gets storms. If you've ever been out there at an event and you've watched the storms come in from the mountains, you can kind of see them come in and watch with dread as they get closer and closer. And for whatever reason, that area in particular, I don't know if it's the way the convective currents happen with the mountains and the weather systems. I don't know. Not a meteorologist, but I do know you can go from 100 degrees to gusting winds and hail in a very short amount of time there. And she said they were able to, at this Porsche event, get all of the, a lot of the rare Porsches and stuff. They got them into the garages at PPIR, but her and a handful of other folks got stuck outside and just had to take it with the hail because there's nowhere to park. There's no overpasses nearby. You're just kind of stuck. Which if you listen to the show anywhere else across the country, and you don't live in a place, or you do live in a place that doesn't get hail, consider yourself lucky because, man, here in Colorado, we get hail and it's never good. And we get a lot of hail. Part of the reason why our insurance rates are sometimes so high. So anyway, her car gets pummeled with hail and she is heartbroken. And she ends up, she said her car was in dealer condition. It was rated that way by the insurance adjuster. She managed to get a payout on it, had to use the payout to do some work on the house instead. But she's grown to, she's grown to really love the car. And she says it's going to be one of her forever cars. And even with a couple little dimples from the hail on it. And you know what? I mean, I respect that a lot. And she says, this is going to be one of her forever cars. And she did ask if anyone else has the same story of getting their car pummeled with hail while at PPIR. And if you do, you were probably at the same event that she was. And I would argue, Pamela, that the hail probably makes the car faster, the hail damage. Didn't Mythbusters do a thing on this? I swear Mythbusters did a thing on this like 10 years ago. Oh gosh, it was probably more than 10 years ago now. They did a thing where they did a dimpled car, like a golf ball. Like a golf ball has dimples. So they dimpled a car, and I don't recall the outcome of that. If you're watching on podcasts, Spotify, wherever, if you remember that, let me know what ended up happening. I can't remember exactly the outcome. Did it make the car faster or not? I would argue it would make the car faster. I would argue it would. So we might have to test this again. So if anyone has a car they want to get hail damaged on, or we could do some artificial hail damage, I got a hammer in the toolbox. We can make it work. So anyway, Pamela, thanks again for being a tremendous listener of the show, listening to it for several years on the radio here in Southern Colorado. I appreciate you doing that. Appreciate you listening to the radio stations as well. Now, I want to get to some stuff with Jeep here before we run out of time here at the end of the show, because Jeep is having some trouble with their Jeeps not catching fire. In fact, do I have a fire extinguisher handy here in the shop? I do have a Jeep here in the shop right now. I don't know if you're watching on video. You can't quite see it. It's in the very back corner. This A86, the Century, and the Subaru is all in the way of you seeing it. But that's my $800 stroker Jeep. I've owned that vehicle. Wasn't my first car, but I have now owned that car the longest. I've had it since 2014. I bought it for $800, and it's gone through a lot of revisions. It does have a fire extinguisher in it, and it actually did catch fire once. Now, granted, that's a 92 Wrangler. I don't think it's affected by the same recall as these new Jeeps are. Now, I did have a fuel hose come off at the fuel rail, and it sprayed fuel all over the exhaust manifold, and it did catch fire once. That has happened. So it does, and ever since then, that was actually one of the things that taught me, oh, hey, you should probably keep a fire extinguisher in your car. In fact, all of your cars, you should have a fire extinguisher, and there's great ways to mount them so they're not rolling around. Lots of good ways to do that. Ironically, that Jeep has a flame paint job that was done sometime in the early 90s, so having it once catch fire is all that much more ironic because it has flames painted on it. So go figure. But what's going on with these Jeeps is a little less exciting than that and a little more dangerous than that. They are telling customers now to park outside. More than 1 million Wrangler and Gladiator owners are being told that they should park outside. Now, what's interesting about this is one of many recalls. I mean, late last year, it was like one thing after another. It almost became a running joke here on the program that Jeeps were having problems. Like, I would do one recall story, and then there'd be another one the next week, and then another one, and it's like, well, I guess this is just the Jeep recall show at this point. Well, this one's concerning, though, because, again, it affects 1 million vehicles, and it doesn't matter if you've got the turbo four-banger, if you've got the Pentastar V6, if you've got the Big Daddy Wrangler 392, doesn't matter, because the problem part here relates to the hydraulic the steering system in the vehicle. So these have a electro-hydraulic steering system. So you have an electronic pump, basically, that then operates a hydraulic rack for the steering, okay? And what ends up happening is there's a connector there that was not manufactured correctly, not manufactured in tolerance. It creates high resistance, and that connector ends up heating up, and then the whole Jeep eventually, let's just say you can't put the smoke back in it. I used to work with a broadcast engineer who would say that. He'd say, yeah, you can't put the smoke back in it. And anyway, so this is what's happening. And even if the vehicle's turned off, there's still potential for it. I would say possibly the only way to fix this right now is actually to disconnect the battery from your Jeep. If you were to park it, is to disconnect the battery. That's my just 2 cents of what could help. But don't take that as a safety thing. If you disconnect the battery and your Jeep catches fire, I don't know. Don't sue me. Sue Jeep instead. That's who you should sue anyway if it catches fire. But the official fix right now, the official fix at the dealership is inspect it, see if the connector looks like it's melting, and that's it. That's it. That's the official fix. Now, supposedly Jeeps made after, where is it here? December 2nd, 2024 are deemed safe because they caught the manufacturing defect in time. But if we know anything now with these Jeeps, I'm telling you, just because they caught the defect in time doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean that they actually solved the problem, because in several cases with these recalls, they have said they've solved the problem and the problem still persisted. So I would be leery of that. I would be leery at the moment of having a Jeep indoors. I would be leery of that. But also, what's going on with Jeep and Stellantis? I mean, this goes back into some of my discussion about, in the last segment about right to repair and why do modern cars have to have all of these systems. I don't want to always be known as the guy who's just a curmudgeon on the radio of old cars were better. They were always made better. I mean, let's be honest here. Old cars weren't always better. Old cars, generally speaking, old cars, I think we tend to look at old cars with rose-tinted glasses more often than not. They were always better. They don't make them like they used to. Well, statistically speaking, modern cars are technically more reliable. We get more mileage on average out of modern cars. I mean, look at the fact that old school cars, way back in the day, the odometers were only 5 digits. They didn't expect you to do 100,000 miles with the car, and you needed a motor rebuild somewhere halfway between that. Like that, sure, old cars, like technically from from a engineering perspective, we are now able to accomplish a higher level of reliability from cars than we have ever had before. The machining is better, the design is better, all of this is better. And yet, issues like this, because somebody wants to have an electronic power steering pump, because somebody wants to have electronic modules to control and automate different things that you really don't need, the infotainment systems, sensors, 360 cameras, all of this stuff in a weird way is kind of tainting the fact that from a mechanical perspective, we are able to make internal combustion engines more reliable than ever. So anyway, hey, don't miss a minute of this program. Catch it on the podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. Remember to subscribe to it on YouTube as well. We're growing the show there every single day, and we'll be back next week with some Pikes Peak hill climb coverage. That's going to be exciting. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week from the Hill Climb Fan Fest.